Hello there, Commonwealth from the Spiral of Life, as today we skydive straight into the biggest hidden meaning found in the build-up to the sequel, all tied to the fifth element ether, and its symbol, the spiral, which we'll explore extensively throughout this video. And why are we doing this? As its importance cannot be understated, seeing that it was cast upon the evil King Ganondorf as the ultimate sealing technique, not so different from Demise himself by goddess Hylian. So be sure to leave a like and subscribe to Commonwealth Realm and bring us past 300,000 subscribers. We're so close to reaching it before my 30th birthday on June 13th. All for a big Switch OLED plus game giveaway.
This video was written together with @AncientSearcher on Twitter and is based on the same inspiration that the Zelda team has taken. The ancient world of modern times of West and East, ranging from mythology, philosophy, science, and history, along with obvious ties to Studio Ghibli and even Naruto. The last time the Zelda team revealed the inspiration and development of Breath of the Wild was in their 2017 GDC keynote, days before the release of Breath of the Wild, stating in its final phases the phrase, "In Japan, where we remember something that stirs the soul, we use the phrase Gutto Kuru to capture that feeling," emphasizing the key role of the human soul and the emphasis of Western and Japanese influence for the Zelda team. After all, they brought up the world-famous School of Athens Renaissance fresco, which is the key to this mind-blowing revelation, alongside paintings from the Japanese Edo period. Which brings us to Link of the Wild, who ultimately represents the forces of courage and life, aka Breath itself in Hyrule. A new hope for the world that lasts as long as he breathes. There is meaning to Link's resurrection after his initial fall, as the spirit of the hero has a deeper purpose. The reason being that Hyrule was fine with champions of the four elements, as long as Hylia's and the ancient Sheikah's plan of containing the calamity stood firm. Nevertheless, the day plan A of four elemental champions and Princess and her knight failed. Their plan B was initiated. Link as the sole surviving fifth champion, set on the hero's path, which deliberately is depicted by a green line on the map found in Breath of the Wild. One that would lead him to the life force of green and the fifth element, the invisible aether, an almost endless source of energy, which we have already seen in the green arm and the one-eye automaton in the sky in the E3 2021 teaser. So, why is this the case? Well, since the mighty Daruk's the champion of fire, Mipha the champion of water, Revale the champion of wind, and Urbosa the champion of earth. These four elements were first listed by the ancient Greeks Plato, Aristotle, and Euclid in ancient Greece, defining four visible mortal elements: fire, water, wind, and earth. And for the invisible, heavenly, located in the celestial regions and heavenly bodies, Plato stated that there is a fifth element, ether,
which is the source of life energy, known around the world under different words: quintessence, chi, aura, mana. In other words, all five elements are found around the world in Greek, European, Japanese, Buddhist, and Babylonian alchemy. In Laputa, Castle in the Sky, the famous and very first Studio Ghibli anime film from 1986, that being the same year as the first Zelda game, ether was the element of the Ethereum crystal, the one that enabled Laputa to hover in the sky. In the introduction scene of this film, we see a goddess infusing her breath of divine ether to the sky, and 5 years later in the half book of the SNES Zelda game, Link to the Past, in the same way, we saw this time the three goddesses infuse their breath of divine ether to the sky, Hyrule and Hylians. You may have guessed it already, but the sequel refers to both the mortal land of Hyrule and the divine immortal Sky Realm, and it has purpose. Since based on interviews and official making-of videos, we know that the Zelda team headed by Onuma-san and Fujibayashi-san were inspired by three outer non-Zelda factors when developing Breath of the Wild. Other open-world franchises like Skyrim, Western and Eastern antiquities, so 2000-plus-year-old civilizations, and last but definitely not least, Japanese manga and anime, mostly Ghibli movies. Both the spiral as life energy and the seal as a way to control it were also shown in the Japanese manga and anime Naruto, where, as we already have mentioned, a seal in the form of a spiral was placed in order to sustain the enormous power of the Nine-Tails fox. Later in the story, Naruto's master Jiraiya loosened the spiral seal so that Naruto could use a portion of that power with a technique called the 5 Elemental Unseal. The 5 elements, which have clearly inspired the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Well, that and 1997's Final Fantasy VII, which heavily revolved around the source of green spirit energy and its exploitation by mortals. Life Force, which is borrowed from the planet during our lifetime before it returns to the eternal life stream upon our death. And green in the Zelda series has since 1998 and Ocarina of Time been tied to one specific goddess. Farore, who in the era of creation brought life to the earth created by Din to uphold the law of time established by Nehru. Needless to say, the Zelda team takes inspiration from other mediums, games and anime, but primarily history, philosophy and folklore elements. Just like we saw in Breath of the Wild with the ancient Japanese Jomon and ancient Greek and Roman architecture and name references. Which brings us to a very old and mysterious civilization, the so-called extinct Zonai tribe, which through their ruins showed great respect for the dragon Farosh, the spirit animal of Farore, all while at the same time also acknowledging the owl of wisdom and the boar of power.
And this trinity naturally ties to the Triforce, and through it the 3 golden goddesses up in the heavens. Another example of the inspiration for the trinities in this sequel, and combining these together into one. Service from Breath of the Wild and Underground and Sky in the sequel, Blood of the Goddess, Hatred of the Demon, and Spirit of the Hero, and through it the intertwined destinies of Zelda, Ganondorf, and Link. The Blood of the Goddess causes the return of the demon, and the return of the demon brings the hero back. Throughout the Zelda series, we have seen spirits taking the place of the goddesses. Following in chronological timeline order, first we had the Dragons of Skyward Sword. Then in Twilight Princess, we had the far more involved light spirits and the Battle of Light of Dark that is present in that game. To the extent that the light spirits were key in aiding Princess Zelda and Link in the final battles against Ganondorf. The appointed divine guardian spirits, where look and behold, the light spirit Faron, representing Farore, has its tail swirled up into a spiral, making up, you guessed it, the symbol. Not only that, all the light spirits carry the energy spiral in their spiritual form, or as we have already deducted, divine ether, immortal divine spiritual energy. Last but not least, in Breath of the Wild, we have the colors corresponding to the golden goddesses through the dragons, acting as spiritual guardians of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild and observing the areas that had not yet fallen to Calamity Ganon, Dinral, Naydra, and Varash. Naydra, much like the rest of the activated forces of wisdom, was corrupted by malice, but not the Dragon of Courage. But that covers the Trinity. There is also the duality of opposing factors in the sequel, most obvious being light and dark, life and death as we have gone through the spiral, good and evil, heaven and hell, sky and underground, and potential sun and blood moon. The latter is, after all, the source of malice to resurrect demons.
But what is the key for Link to reach the final goal? In Breath of the Wild, we witnessed 5 champions fighting against Calamity Ganon, but only 4 elements being activated, that of water, fire, wind, and earth. Well, after locating and taking advantage of the 4 elements in Breath of the Wild, the 5th and final element is about to be revealed in the sequel, the Spiral of Life, Aoife, the only champion who survived the calamity and rose up again to face the Scourge in Breath of the Wild and its creator in the sequel. But before obtaining and mastering the divine power of Aoife, he stands no chance against Ganondorf, hence the new hand and Broken Master Sword quest. And he might be setting out on this quest together with the unbreakable spirit of the only other right-handed Link, the first hero of them all, Link of Skyloft, the source of the spirit of the hero who started his Master Sword quest by pulling the goddess sword. All in the sky, where the hero returns to reforge the for now corrupted Broken Master Sword. The first hero, the one who approached the first spiral placed by goddess Hylia to imprison the mice in the sealed grounds. And fittingly enough, Aoife was considered by the ancient Greeks as a divine element, one bound to the heavens and the gods, as Aoife is the divine essence of the sky in ancient Greek history, and was symbolized by an eternal spiral, nature's own symbols found in space, whirlpools, shells, and plants. As Greek ancient searcher on Twitter explained it, quote, Aoife's shape is the spiral, a curved line that revolves around the center point, just like a certain symbol that has been plastered across the only structure built by the goddesses in the Zelda series, the Wind Waker's Tower of Gods, where we find the spiral on nearly every part of the structure. While there and in many places tied to a certain race in Breath of the Wild, the Zonai, and yes, it goes across the trilogy of director Hidemaru Fujibayashi. And in the core of this spiral, Goddess Hylia imprisoned the mice during the First War. And who sealed them time and time again here? Link, the spirit of the hero, the greatest manifestation of life itself.
Bringing the spiral back to its core as Link departs the mortal realm of the surface for the divine immortal realm of the sky. And what does Link possess when heading up to the sky? The Gauntlet of the Spiritual Hand, which kept a spiral seal on Ganondorf, an unbreakable spirit that allows him to cross boundaries to face the challenges in the realm of immortal spirits and goddesses. After all, this gauntlet is the replacement of the Sheikah Slate, this time not only pausing time, but reversing it. The spiral of life, connecting the essence of immortality with that of mortality. Life that eternally fights and conquers death in order to prevail against the malice of the demon tribe and its king. A tale that stretches across this trilogy, back to the original ancient battle of Goddess Hylia, and then Link against the Demon King Demise, and now Link against Ganondorf. The divine intervention, when Hylia sent fragments of land up in the sky to protect the final remnants of her chosen people from the mortal world, and now the return of the hero back to the pure divine realm. After the hero successfully passed all trials, he was able to fulfill his wish for peace to return and seal the evil, forcing the spiral-shaped Skykeep with the power of the goddesses return to the sealed grounds to crush the imprisoned Demise in the present.
Specifically for the very first wish the Golden Goddesses granted. Sadly, Girahim for his time trickery forced the defeat of his true form in the past, setting the stage for a curse cast on the blood and the spirit, starting with Skyward Sword, continued in Breath of the Wild, and concluded as the spiral of ether of life goes up against the reincarnated hatred of Demise, Ganondorf. And the solution is found where? The sky, the land of the gods, a divine realm which cannot be seen with the naked mortal eye from the surface, or reached in a mortal form unless you possess the power of an immortal spirit, which Link through the hand does, and uses the spiral to get up and down from the heavens. That is what this sequel is all about, giving a spiritual face and place for the ones that were long gone in Breath of the Wild.
Ancient Searcher explained this the following way. The spiral symbolizes the so-called path of the soul. The beginning of the spiral and life itself is symbolized with a center point, and it unfolds, carving an evolving path, a trajectory where all our life experiences and knowledge are stored as memories. Plato stated that all experience and knowledge one gains during his life turns into memories in his soul, and then memories turn into knowledge, an eternal cycle. He also believed the following. Throughout life, time periods change from good to bad and then good again. In order for Plato to explain it, he pictured it like a spring coil that is bent when an outer force is applied to it, and resulting to react, jump back, and return to its original form. The result being a spiral, a line that always moves away from its center, but always remains around the core. One of the main challenges for Link in Breath of the Wild was to recall his lost memories. Although these memories existed inside him, he couldn't initially recall them in the locations where they took place. Instead, he first had to reach specific locations with the image from the past to recollect them. So, what Link did in Breath of the Wild was to physically and emotionally synchronize with the place he had gained the knowledge in order to remember who he was. Much like in real life, when after many years we revisit places, leading us to relive our past experiences. The combination of the time the image was taken, aka the past, with the present, forced forth the recollection of the memory that was shaped here.
And the spiral goes far deeper back than that in Zelda. It began with the first battle, and then the hero of the sky versus the mice in Skyward Sword before going through the entire timeline. In the past, Ocarina of Time, the Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess kept on forming the spiral until it arrived at the possible endpoint with the hero of the wilds, who will finally seek out his and the fifth element of ether, as the previous four champions did with their unique spiritual abilities. As this is a sequel that focuses on ether, trinities, dualities, but most of all purpose, the path of the hero, the spiral of life, and the hero rising literally up to the sky to face his destiny and bring an end to the suffering with the spiral of life. But what do you think of the deeper meaning of the sequel and the spiral? Sound off in the comment section down below. A big thanks goes to @AncientSearcher on Twitter for helping me outline this theory from its core and reach my own awakening, or with it, your awakening with this video. So please leave a like and subscribe as I shout out our patreon.com/CommonRealm patrons, and in particular, role producer Charles Shash. You rock, and Please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.